On today's show, we hear from Brad Treliving ahead of the NHL Draft. We'll react to what he had to say about free agency, Mitch Marner, the draft, and more. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leafs-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. All right, Dave. Offseason mode is up and running. We've had a few more trades go down on Wednesday. We've got a lot more, I guess we call it stokes in the fire when we're talking about some other trade wins that are blowing. And we're now just a little over 24 hours away from the start of the 2024 NHL Draft, the unofficial start to the offseason, I suppose. And I'm excited, man. I'm giddy. Like I love this week. All of the moves, the kind of, the politics of hockey, I guess is what you could kind of call it. The silly season. I love it. And the Maple Leafs have not quite joined the party yet, but it sounds like they plan on doing it fairly soon, Dave.
It does. Obviously, there's, I guess, a lot of teams that are kind of figuring out where their plans went. I mean, we got that trade with the Canucks and the Blackhawks. Once again, just another clear salary dump. And
I got a question for you, actually, stemming off of that trade. Is there anyone who you kind of look at and you're like, if Toronto wanted to open up some more space, they could maybe consider doing a deal like that? Is there anyone on the roster who kind of comes to mind there?
Not really. I mean, unless you consider David Kampf's contract kind of problematic. He was the closest.
Yeah, he was the only one that I somewhat thought of, right? Like when I saw the Mikheyev trade go through, and I'm like, okay, they gave up a second-round pick. Now Mikheyev's making $4.5 million and not worth anywhere near that, barely worth half that money on a long-term deal. Like he's got 2 or 3 more years left on that contract too. So, it's kind of been a tough go for Mikheyev since leaving Toronto and signing in Vancouver. So they get out of that deal, and that opens up space for them going forward. Toronto, you wouldn't be opening up as much space, I suppose. He's making 2.4 for the next 3 years, so it's still a decent chunk. But the other reason why I thought about it was just because if you wanted to open that up, you saw what you were able to get out of a guy like Pontus Holmberg, filling in as a fourth line center role sometimes this season. And, maybe you could put that money towards upgrading, getting, a more traditional 3C in free agency and using just that little bit of space and then allowing Lindholm to take over that 4C role full time. That was kind of the only that's kind of what crossed my mind, I suppose, when I saw that deal. I was like, I wonder if the Maple Leafs could work something out with David Kampf and something like that. And that's a way to kind of improve the roster and open up a little bit more space.
Yeah, that's realistically, all their salaries obviously tied up. Salary cap is tied up to their top players. So it's if you're looking for that one not so great contract, it's probably David Kampf. When that contract was signed, we were okay, they're paying a bit of a premium for a guy that maybe they'll see some time at 3C, but seeing how last season went, I could definitely see if there is a player, he's the one. It's also the Leafs just don't have really many draft picks to trade away to do one of those deals. I mean, although Chicago's getting a 2027 pick out of it, Vancouver's getting a 2027 pick. It's not. It was sort of one of those just take this guy, please. And Mikheyev also had to waive his no trade clause, but I think he was quite happy to do that.
Yeah, willing to go, willing to move on and start something fresh. We got to hear from Brad Treliving today, though. So, we've been talking about how we've been hearing nothing but rumors for a long time without actually hearing from the horse himself. And today we finally got a chance to listen to Brad Treliving speak down in Vegas. They're all down there now. You got the NHL awards tonight. You've got the NHL draft tomorrow. It's going to be a steamy 48 hours here in the NHL. Before we get to that, I completely forgot about this actually until it literally just came out of my mouth that the award ceremony was tonight. Auston Matthews is going to be in attendance, brother. Auston Matthews still has a chance to win himself a Ted Lindsay, not the Hart. Wasn't nominated for the Hart, but the Ted Lindsay he was nominated for and has an opportunity to win that tonight. Where do you handicap his odds of actually being able to get that, or where do you think he places on the ballot, first, second, or third?
I'm probably going to lean third.
Well, so McDavid number one,
yeah,
probably, and then what? McKinnon? Was it?
Yeah.
Is it McKinnon? No, was it McKinnon or was it? Who was the other player? Maybe it was McKinnon. I'm trying to remember.
Sorry, no, it's McKinnon, Kucherov, Matthews.
Yeah, McKinnon, Kucherov. Yeah, so McDavid was actually left off of the ballot.
Yeah,
so it's McKinnon or McDavid. Like.
I think
at 69 goals, man. Like, we forget about that. We don't talk about that enough. He had 69 goals. That is the hardest thing to do in the NHL is to score goals. He had 69 of them in 80 games. Like, it's unbelievable what this guy was able to do this season. It still boggles my mind. So close to 70. Like, there's a chance that he could end up taking home the because this one's voted by the players. This one's not voted by the media. He didn't make the top 3 ballot for the Hart. He didn't make it. He wasn't on the Hart ballot. They decided to go with McKinnon, Kucherov, and McDavid over him. But the players know, and the players realize, okay, this guy's the most feared dude in the league when he's got the puck on his stick, and the object of the game is to score more goals than the other team. Therefore, he might be one of the best players and maybe have the greatest season out of everybody. So I actually give Matthews a decent chance to win this award despite not even being nominated for the Hart. I don't know if that's a hot take, and we'll find out in the next few hours, but I probably would be putting my vote for him because of the 69 goal season he had.
Yeah, I just also think, like, you talk about players who's dangerous when the puck is on their stick. I think Nathan McKinnon very high on that list. That's why I think it's gonna be McKinnon one. I could see Matthews finishing above Kucherov. Like, Kucherov had an impressive season, but like, when you're comparing it to what McKinnon did and what McDavid did, I don't know if, and even what Matthews did, I don't know if it's enough to really get him above those other guys. So I'll change my stance and say Matthews second, but I still think McKinnon comes away on top. Would I be surprised if Matthews wins? No, for all the reasons you just said. I just feel like this McKinnon just had such a fantastic year that a lot of people even are considering him for the Hart for that reason.
I would imagine he ended up 4th on the Hart Trophy list, but yeah, McKinnon, McDavid, Kucherov for the Hart. Just take a look now. I almost forget. It's been so long since I've looked at all of these trophies. But yeah, Matthews, McKinnon, Kucherov for the Ted Lindsay. The Vezina's locked up with Hellebuck. Got to think. The Calder, obviously, Connor Bedard's going to take that home. The Norris Trophy, Quinn Hughes. Are we on the Quinn Hughes train for the Norris?
Yeah,
this
I'm
year?
on the Quinn Hughes.
He had a hell of a season. I think like the only one that really will have any sort of, what's the word I'm looking for here? Intrigue, I suppose, is like the Hart and the Ted Lindsay. Because the rest of them, I think, pretty much we have a good idea of who's going to win those ones. So for me, it's the Hart and the Ted Lindsay, the 2 trophies that I think have the most up in the air, the most debate, I guess, which makes sense. You're talking about the best players in the league competing against each other for the trophy to say who is actually the best. So that would make a lot of sense. All right. On the other side, let's get into what Brad Treliving had to say. We'll play the audio and we'll kind of break it down and give our thoughts to what he had to say about free agency, Mitch Marner, the blue line, goaltending, the draft, and so much more. We'll get into it next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from receipt, and the lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes guesswork out of buying MLB tickets, and they've got great last-minute ticket deals. You can save up to 60% off your tickets buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater events, and it's true. I've done it. 2 hours before first pitch, I legitimately went to a baseball game, went to a Blue Jays game. I think it was 15 rows behind the batter's box, 15 rows behind home plate. I think I paid $30 for them using Game Time, and I got $20 off my purchase as well. It was fantastic. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every weekday here on the show. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts, and you can also find it online on YouTube. We ask that if you enjoy the content, you've enjoyed the show, that you subscribe and leave a like and leave a comment down below. What are your thoughts to our conversation we were having earlier? Did Auston Matthews and his 69-goal season, was that enough to win himself the Ted Lindsay? I want to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And I'd also like to know your thoughts on what Brad Treliving had to say today down in Vegas, speaking with the media ahead of the draft, talking about free agency, what he plans on doing this summer, really just a whole bunch of questions that he was fielding. Why don't we play the audio? We'll play the entire interview, and we'll kind of stop and we'll talk and we'll react to the answers that he's giving. And that could kind of that'll be it for today's show. So why don't we start it off right now? I think he initially starts off by talking about the number one priority for the Maple Leafs this summer. Here's Brad Treliving.
So Brad, how does it feel to have a first full off season with the team and kind of dealing with everything there?
Yeah, well, it's been too long. It feels feels like it's been a long off season thus far. So we've got lots of work to do. We said it last time we met with all of you, that we got a lot of work to do this summer, and we've that began right after the season. Obviously, bringing Craig in, working through the coaching staff changes that have been made, and then have been working on the roster. And so, obviously, this week we're here. There's you're dealing with the draft, and doing a lot of the framing, a lot of the work that goes into building your team over the course of the summer. And keep in mind, this is one weekend. I know we all get focused in on the draft over the next 2 days, which is key, and the start of free agency. But we don't play till October, and we'll continue to work, as we said, look at all avenues to try to make our team better between now and puck drop.
Have you identified a number one priority between now and July 1st?
Well, I think there's lots of priorities. I think for us, I don't think it's a secret. Our defense is an area that we'd like to see if we can improve. Easier said than done. So, but that's certainly an area that we've been focused on. Looking at the trade market since we've finished the end of the year, the difficulty, the types of players you're looking for usually aren't available in the trade market. So that's an area right now. We've got some cap space, but you do look at the holes that we have to fill, and it goes quickly. So, we're trying to be as prudent as we can to look at the defense. I wouldn't say look at it first, but look at it first before we, before we commit too many cap dollars anywhere else. What are the odds you keep your first round pick?
Pause it there. Pause it there and break down that comment right there, because I think that was actually a pretty telling comment of what's going on in the mind of Brad Treliving. I mean, we've kind of spoken on the fact that it's bizarre and odd. We heard there was mutual interest with both Tyler Bertuzzi and Max Domi about returning to Toronto, yet didn't see any deal come. Not to say it can't come, but didn't see it. And now we know, well, maybe it's because Brad Treliving, if you read between the lines, believes, hey, we may be able to sign these guys at some point, but we want to make sure that we have enough money to do what we think we have to do to compete with other teams to go out and get the defensemen that they believe that can make this team a little bit better. And they want to make sure that they have the cap space available and that it's not locked into forwards, and they're trying to not commit to more cap dollars prior to free agency. That's kind of what I took away from that comment.
Yeah, I think it's just Brad Treliving realizing, yes, we have cap space, but when you look at all the needs that the Leafs have, that money it dries up very easily. You can say you have a budget for this much, you sign a couple players, and it's like, oh, we actually don't have as much as we think we did initially. And when he says some cap space, like, we all know that with that cap space, players are going to see that and say, yeah, you have room for me. You have this much cap space. Like, you're trying to nickel and dime, especially when you're talking about a Tyler Bertuzzi and Max Domi. I think this is a situation where, yeah, they're trying to figure out, can they come to a number? And I think the Leafs are just like, guys, if this is what you're looking for, we have other needs. Go and see if you can get that out on the market and come back to us if you don't. I think that was something we've heard quite a bit kind of the last couple of days. Like, as much as they want to bring everybody back, it's just not feasible when you consider everything that the Leafs want to do.
It sounds like they have an idea of the players who they want to target on free agency, and they know what it probably will cost. And in order to make those additions, then yeah, they're not going to be able to hand out, $5-6 million to Tyler Bertuzzi, or $4 million, $4.5 million to Max Domi. They can't go out and just dole out $10 million between those two to those players this season. I think they realize that, in order to get the players that they want, they're going to have to spend up and spend a little bit more than they've done previously, getting just some kind of random defenseman that they're throwing on the third pairs. Simon Benoit worked out, but Victor Mete or Zach Bogosian, like, go down the list of guys that they've just kind of brought in and have just kind of thrown in there. Mark Giordano on a league minimum deal. They may need to buy some expensive defensemen this summer. And, two names that today, just kind of listening to a lot of the media, I guess, like a lot of the insiders when they did their media hits, whether it was Chris Johnston on his show, on the CJ show for the SDPN, and also I heard Dreger on Overdrive. They both named two defensemen specifically that the Maple Leafs may have their eye on. One was Chris Tanev, which we all have long known that there's been interest there. Obviously, the clear connection with Tanev and Treliving dating back to their Calgary days, and the fact that Tanev, Toronto native, may want to come back and play, and he's a perfect fit for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But also Matt Roy's name was brought up twice by both insiders, which I find to be quite interesting. Usually means that his name is being brought up because there's some smoke there, I would imagine. But one other thing that I thought that was kind of interesting that was discussed by both insiders as well was maybe Toronto's willingness to get creative and potentially sign a guy like Chris Tanev to a long-term deal to buy down the AAV. So instead of signing him to like a 2, 3, 4-year deal, maybe do sign him to a 5-6-year deal, and you try and get that AAV down as much as possible. And then you just kind of worry about years 4, 5, and 6 when you get there. Right. And I'm curious what you think about that reporting that was out there today. And if that would be a good idea for the Maple Leafs, if you'd be on board with that type of maneuvering this summer.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to, in some ways, get creative. I do get that. And yes, I do get with the cap going up, you feel like you've got a little more space to work with than maybe you think you had in other years, but you just got to be very careful of not getting caught in like the buyer's remorse, right? Like, yeah, we have a little bit of cushion and we have cushion coming up with the cap going up. I just don't want to get in a situation here where they come to regret a deal just because they feel like if it's one that pushes them across the line, eventually they get to a cup, like, we're not going to be talking about it. But when you consider just how tight this team has been with their cap space for years.
Well, that's what we're saying. That's what I mean. They're being very frugal with the cap space because they're willing to give more term to buy down that AAV. So that's kind of the point of what they're trying to do here.
It's just you got to be careful of how much term is, especially when you're getting into guys in their 30s.
Well,
right?
I mean, what is Toronto known for players who may not be worth their contract anymore, David? I don't know if they're too worried about, hey, why don't you just park it for the next 3 years? We'll pay you. Sit at home. You got a bum knee. Don't worry about it. You had a bad back. You've been dealing with injuries your whole career. Just sit the next 3 years out. It's all good. We'll pay you. No problem. Leafs have been prone to do that many, many a time, my friend.
Yep. Far too often, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. Why don't we take one more quick break? We'll come back and we'll play the rest of what Brad Treliving had to say. Still talks about what's going on with their pick at number 23, Mitch Marner, the blue line. Lots more to come up next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti. It is the award ceremony tonight for the NHL Awards. We'll all be rooting for Auston Matthews as he's nominated for the Ted Lindsay for the best player in the NHL, nominated by the player. So hopefully that comes to fruition. He gets the respect he deserves. But we also heard from Brad Treliving on Wednesday. So we're going to continue to break down what Treliving had to say. And the next comment he had to make was about what the Leafs' plans are for their first round pick at pick number 23.
I don't know what that is, Josh. That's probably not very good if I deal it, but I wouldn't say I'm not opposed to moving it. I would say, as I sit here right now, more than likely we're making the pick. We'd certainly look at it if it fits obviously a player that can fill a hole in our lineup right now. I don't think that's likely. The next step with that, Josh, is looking to possibly acquire more draft capital. We'll see, but I think it's probably more than likely right now that we're going to make the pick.
There's so much discussion about Mitch Marner and his status with the team. With you able to extend him as of July 1st, do you expect to try to do that?
Well, you know what, Chris, I'm not going to speculate on everything. I think it's real clear. I want to make it real clear. Mitch is a star. Mitch is a superstar in the league, and he's been that since he's entered the league, and he's been that ever since he put on a Maple Leaf jersey. We said it at the end of the year that we weren't happy how the year ended. That's not Mitch. Let's not focus it on Mitch. As an organization, as a team, we felt we should have gone further than we did. So when that happens, you have to look at everything. And, no different than every other 31 teams that are here, we're going to try to make our team better. But I'm not going to speculate on that. Like I said, he's a star. As we do with any player, we're not going to get into speculation on of that nature, but certainly he's a special player.
Obviously, there's a whole lot of uncertainty in the.
Very, very well spoken of Mitch Marner there, isn't he, Dave?
Well, he is, and it's been pointed out. I mean, we've pointed out on this podcast, and people were pointing it out today that first off, Brad Treliving, when he said he doesn't want to speculate and that Mitch is a star, he's missing one other part to that we've heard about Auston Matthews and about William Nylander, and that it's a priority to get those contracts done. Like, he is doing his best. I wouldn't call it a sales pitch job, but what he's trying to do is he's trying to say we value Mitch Marner, but we're not like ready to dole out an 8-year, $12 million deal to this guy either. Like, I think he's playing the fence a little bit here.
Oh, he's talking up his guy so that teams around the league don't, he's trying to make it seem like he doesn't want to trade him, right?
Yeah.
Like he's worth trading for, and the price that it's going to take to acquire him. That's what he's doing here. I think. That's what I think he's doing here. Do you want to continue, or is there anything else you want to mention on that portion there?
No, he's I think the part where he said too, like, that wasn't Mitch, and like they pretty much had a conversation telling him that what his playoffs were like wasn't good enough. I'm just like, was it not? Like, I don't know. I think we've seen this Mitch Marner a few times before.
Yeah, exactly. That is the problem. You say that wasn't Mitch. It kind of was. It kind of was. Now, a new coach. Will a new coach bring something else out of Mitch? I mean, is that worth exploring? I feel like that doesn't get brought up enough. We talked about that a little bit with Liljegren. Maybe a new coach could spark something in Lily. Could a new coach spark something in Mitch Marner? Like, is it worth giving this Marner and Berube? Is this worth giving those two a shot to try and see if he can get something out of them?
Yeah, that's the other thing too. We've heard a lot of, right? Like, can Craig Berube get a different Mitch Marner? They had that coffee meeting. I'm sure Brad Treliving's trying to figure out whether or not Craig Berube's got the intuition of whether he can get through to this guy. I don't know. I think it's still way too early to even think about that.
I've got a great offseason topic, by the way, that we'll throw in there like once every couple of weeks or something, kind of like a role-playing game. We'll call it Craig's Coffee Corner, where one of us will be like Craig Berube, and we throw like a role-play scenario out at the person. That's keep that in the noodle, by the way. Keep that in the noodle.
You know what I'll do is I'll go to the coffee shop and I'll just park myself there and be in that exact chair that Berube was in.
We should go and recreate the picture. We should recreate the photo, like the Mona Lisa.
Definitely can.
We could. We should. All right, let's continue on with Brad Treliving speaking with the media.
Draft pass number 1. What kind of depth do you see, once you get to like 15, 14, 15 through the end of the first round?
I think you probably sum that up best, probably in most recent drafts. Listen, everybody's probably got a little different list, but I would say in the last number of years, you may go around, you may have a different order in the top 5, top 10, but you're probably 32 teams have probably got 8 of the guys there. I think it could be all over the place right now, right? Some really good players. I think when you have a situation like that, it lends itself to have some fallers, as we'd call. There may be somebody that you've got higher than somebody else does, and so therefore I think there's going to be players available. Now we're at 23, where there gets down to that number that are high on people's lists that they're going to get them, 10 to 15. I do believe that. So we're comfortable with the group of players that we've got there right now. We'll see, as it is every draft. Until the names start coming off the board, I'm pretty confident. I think I know who's going number 1. After that, I think it'll be interesting to see how the board flows.
What are you going to do in goal now that there's been some big name goalies that have swapped teams? Do you adjust your plan as
What
far
are we
as,
going to do, Garrett?
well, I mean, how do you go about?
Yeah. Well, listen, we it's certainly an area when we talk about defense. We feel we got a real good goalie, and I talked about it at the end of the year in Joe Wall, like a really good goalie. We also talked at the end of the year about, he's had some unfortunate instances of getting injured. Now, you study that. Is there a pattern? Is this? And again, now touch wood. Sometimes with goaltenders, I look at it a little bit. Is it hips? Is it groins? Is it those? He's had some things that just have happened, right? That sometimes you get injured. So certainly we want to help him stay upright. But no question, we've got I don't see an internal candidate right now that we're going to promote with Joe. So that's, whether that be the trade market, whether that be through free agency, we've certainly got to look at the goaltending for sure.
Well, that's pretty telling, right? That's pretty telling that they're definitely still going to continue to be aggressive in the goaltending market. Very, very glowing remarks of Joe Woll as well, who is rumored to be getting a nice big fat extension on July 1st himself. But the fact that he came out and said, I don't see an internal candidate to promote from within to be Joe Woll's tandem partner. Guess he doesn't feel the Hildebeest is ready to go for Toronto. I also heard that Artur Akhtiamov is going to be coming overseas, and he's going to be developing with the Marlies. So that'll be a nice, fun 1-2 punch with Hildebeest and Akhtiamov. But neither apparently ready to go to be a tandem or challenge Joe Woll for the starting spot. So it does sound like we'll probably see the Maple Leafs either trade for a goaltender, one of the few that are left, whether it's Saros, I doubt, maybe a Philip Gustafsson, but more likely sounds like he's hinting at we'll take a run at one of those guys in free agency, whether it's Anthony Stolarz or whether it's Laurent Brossoit. That's probably going to end up being what they end up doing in goal here. Heck, maybe they even turn back to, well, I was going to say maybe Marty Jones, but he probably might not have made that internal candidate comment if Martin Jones was in the picture.
Yeah, I was going to say that there's not that internal candidate, meaning both Sam.
Oh, did I lose? Did you? You paused. I think we lost. Did we lose you, Dave?
You got me?
I got you. All right.
Okay. I think we just had a weird connection issue. But
okay.
I think it's pretty much saying Jones and Samsonov, like your lockers are packed. We'll see you guys. Enjoy your off season. Enjoy what's next for you guys. Like I think that was that comment there for sure.
Yeah. They told us Samsonov was not coming back like the day the season ended. They were like, no. Sammy's not coming back. We already knew that for sure.
I think the big one here is I think you're right. I personally just don't see, considering the comment he made about their cap dollars and how much they want to do, but they got to be careful. I think if it's either they go out and trade for a guy like a Gustafsson, who what he is making next year, or you go out and you say, we don't need to go out and get a starting goaltender, which, correct me if I'm wrong, there isn't one out there.
Yeah.
Free agency.
Now that I believe, at least.
There's tandem options, right? Stolarz and Brossoit are kind of the two names I'm looking at here.
Are they tandems or are they backups, though? Like, they sat behind Bobrovsky and Hellebuck. Like,
I know, like Stolarz, I would say, was more of a tandem when he was in Anaheim because Gibson was always hurt.
Gibson also sucked.
That too. Actually, Stolarz had pretty good numbers considering the Ducks sucked. I mean, we'll get more into those guys later. Brossoit is definitely a backup. Like he played for Hellebuck. I'm trying to remember who did he play on back behind when he was
Vegas.
in Vegas. I think it was Thompson.
Oh God, Thompson, Aiden Hill. I mean,
he was
a bunch of dudes.
Yeah. So I mean, but at the same time, I consider those guys backups. The really only tandem guy I see out in the market for trade wise is Gustafsson.
Yeah, agreed.
That's the only one I see.
Agreed. All right, let's continue.
Discussions. How are they going with some of your pending UFAs?
I haven't got anybody signed yet. They're going, right. It's a little bit as what I talked about earlier, David, is and we all know the players, right? We've got some players, we'd like to retain them. we've got to focus on the defense, right? So it's hard if you want to give yourself as much flexibility on the blue line. Every dollar that you spend up top maybe takes away from that. That's not to say we wouldn't sign a forward. We're just, it's like any negotiation out there yet. So we'll continue that, over the course of the next, whatever it is, till Monday, I guess it is, free agency, or Monday, Tuesday, whenever the first is. Certainly some players we'd like to retain. You got X amount of dollars, you got X amount of seats. It's, you just got to see if the math works.
Would you be looking to create more X amount of dollars, like via trade? Like you mentioned, you have cap space, but you could have more cap space.
Oh, there's all sorts of ways to. That'd be one way to create space, right? But you don't want to necessarily make yourself worse either, right? And so we'll keep working away at the puzzle, but certainly we'd like to. Certainly there's some players in our team that are unrestricted that we'd like to sign. We'll see if it's a fit for both sides, and we can get a deal done.
Where are you at with your RFAs, Liljegren and Robertson?
Liljegren and Robertson. Nothing really to report there. Similar as we talked about with our UFAs. That's the difference between the two is Lily's got arb rights. So sometimes, again, just as we all know, you look at it, and the qualify offer is one thing. What the arb case could be is another. So, we've been in touch with his camp to see if there's a number that can work, but that's certainly a consideration, right? Having, the higher the number is, you got to see how that fits into the puzzle as well. So where we are is ongoing talks with their representatives. Yeah.
Are you looking to add multiple defensemen through this period of time?
That's interesting. The fact that he went out of his way to bring up Liljegren's arb rights, and not just the fact that he's got them, but taking a look and saying, hey, sometimes you look at what guys are expected to make during an arb hearing. Maybe it's not a number that you're comfortable with, and therefore we see it happen. I'm pretty sure Pavel Zacha a couple of years ago was just let walk as a free agent because they were worried about what the arbitration number could have came in at. Nick Ritchie, I think, was a similar player a couple of years ago before coming to Toronto. This happens all the time where there's players you're just not quite sure you think are worth the money that maybe the argument or the statistics might say, and it might not work for you. And I think it's very interesting that he brings up Liljegren unpromptedly and says, there could be an issue here. Like maybe he's foreshadowing a little bit of a qualifying offer not being extended to Timothy Liljegren.
I think like the part where he says like we're going to throw a number to them. I think essentially this is the number we're willing to offer you. They're probably going to say, well, we think we can get more. I think we think the arbitrator will lean more towards this number, or this is what we're going to look for in arbitration. And this would lead to just like, okay, well, if we're not even able to come in, we're close to the middle of this, might as well cut bait. And like that, that's a tough one. But at the same time, I think that's where obviously Brad Shilling feels he doesn't have to make that decision right away because, RFAs, there's different deadlines, but and he, as you said, goes out of his way to mention the arbitration because that speeds the process up more in a lot of ways, right? I don't know when exactly the arbitration deadline is, like when to qualify guys for arbitration and when they have to get both teams have to give their numbers and stuff.
Well, I think so you have to qualify your restricted free agents before free agency.
Yes.
So there's definitely a qualifying one. And then you can go right up until the day of or the night before to negotiate before you go to arbitration. But then once you walk into arbitration, then all bets are off.
Yeah.
You're saddled with whatever contract the arbitrator settles on, whether you like it or not. That's the threat of what going to arbitration, what arb rights gives the player. It's a little bit player friendly in that regard. So then the teams might think, if arbitration might, look, if their comps suggest that, let's just say, Liljegren might be trending toward a 2.2 or $2.5 million arbitration, and they don't want to go anywhere near that number, and they throw out, all right, we're willing to give you 1.8 on a 1-year deal, and we'll give you another year to see what you can do. will you take that? Take it or leave it, essentially, because you're not going to get qualified. You can come back to the Leafs at 1.8, or we're going to cut bait and you could be an unrestricted free agent, and then you don't have arbitration rights. And now all of a sudden you're just out there in the pool of UFAs, essentially. So not to say that this is going to happen with Liljegren, but it just is kind of something that, Treliving kind of put on my radar when he said that. So that'll be fascinating to see what happens with Timothy Liljegren and his qualifying offer, which I believe is 1.4 million, is what his QO is going to be. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. I don't think we have enough time to play the rest of it. I think it was somebody had asked if they were willing, if they're going to be going heavy on the right side in particular, or if they're looking to add multiple defensemen. And he said, yes, that's no secret. We want to add multiple defensemen. And he specifically said our right side, we would like to upgrade, which is why the guys like, obviously Chris Tanev, Matt Roy, Brandon Montour's been linked to Toronto a little bit as well. Brandon Pesce potentially. Lots of guys. Did I say Brandon Pesce? Is it Brandon? What? Yeah.
Okay. You said Brandon. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it makes a lot of sense. I'm excited though. Should be a lot of fun to see what the next week brings us as Toronto Maple Leafs fans. As this week here from this Thursday till next Thursday. Lots going to happen. This team will look drastically different, and we'll have a lot of answers to the questions that we've had over the course of the last kind of 6 weeks here since the Maple Leafs got eliminated from the playoffs. All right, we'll wrap things up here today. We were going to do a draft profile, I guess, on Adam Juracek, but it looks like we ran out of time, so maybe we'll have to do a double dose on tomorrow's show, which is fitting because it is draft day, I suppose. So we'll have to do that. But before we leave, I do want to, obviously thoughts and prayers to the Berezin family. Former Toronto Maple Leaf, Sergei Berezin, passed away today. So, from Dave and I, we do want to send our thoughts to his friends, family, and former teammates who were, kind of impacted by the loss of Berezin. So ending on a bit of a somber note, but it's never easy to lose people that, that mean a lot to you. And I grew up watching Sergei Berezin when I was a child, so I'm sure a lot of Leaf fans have some fond memories of Berezin. Just 55 years old. Pretty young guy.
I think actually 52.
52, even younger, even worse.
Yeah,
even
such
worse.
an underrated producer.
Yeah. I mean,
especially in the playoffs.
Let me see what exactly stats were.
Well,
I can't remember.
I have the stats right in front of me. His first playoff with the Leafs, he had 12 points in 17 games. Then he had 8 points in 12 the year after. 37. He was a 37 goal scorer his third year in the league. 25 in his rookie year, and he played. I think the most he ever played in his career was 16 minutes a night, but he was in that 14 to 15 minute average ice time. And always produced. My favorite, a top 5 playoff moment for me growing up was that Steve Thomas goal in overtime, and he's the one that set him up against the Senators. One of my favorite Bob Cole calls too. That's a top 3 Bob Cole call for me when you talk about the Leafs.
Yeah.
Just go back. I watched that thing already 4 times over after I saw the news because I just always remember that. So. Very, very sad. He was only in the league for 5 seasons, but a really good career in Toronto.
Yeah, solid Leaf, solid player, and gone too soon. Very unfortunate. So rest easy, Sergei. That'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs pod on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on X at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. You got the NHL Award ceremony tonight. We'll come back and recap it for you guys tomorrow. We'll also tee up the NHL Draft. Busy show. You're not going to want to miss it, so make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell as well so you know exactly when that Friday episode drops. It'll be a banger. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.